The mall was a whirlwind of chaos on Christmas Eve, with the cold air of winter mixing with the warmth of holiday lights. Mark Thompson, a single father, stood among the bustling crowds, his hands stuffed deep into his coat pockets, his mind consumed by the growing sense of urgency. It had been a tough year between juggling work, paying bills, and trying to make ends meet. He was just grateful he could even give his daughter, Lily, a Christmas gift. But this one had to be special. She'd been asking for the perfect gift for months, a handcrafted dollhouse. And now, with just hours left before the stores closed, Mark knew he had to find it. As he turned a corner, his eyes locked onto it. The dollhouse, sitting on a shelf as if waiting for him. His heart gave a small jump of relief. But as he checked the price tag, that sense of hope faltered. The numbers seemed impossible. His hands tightened around the shopping bag, unsure of how he'd ever afford it. It was then that Sarah, a friendly store clerk, noticed his hesitation. Little did Mark know, this encounter would not only change his Christmas, but would also leave him with a powerful reminder of kindness in the most unexpected places. The streets were a blur of red and green, the city lit up like a Christmas card. Snowflakes fell gently from the sky, caught in the glow of streetlights and the sound of hurried footsteps echoing through the crowded mall. Mark Thompson tightened his grip on the worn leather strap of his messenger bag, the cool winter air biting at his skin. It was just 2 days before Christmas, and the mall was filled to the brim with frantic shoppers searching for last-minute gifts, some in high spirits, others with the anxiety of time running out. Mark wasn't just another shopper, he was a father, determined to make sure his little girl, Lily, would have the best Christmas, despite the odds stacked against him. He had always promised Lily that Christmas would be magical. He'd promised her a holiday filled with presents, family, and joy. But this year was different. As a single father working 2 jobs to make ends meet, Mark didn't have the luxury of extravagant gifts. He barely had the funds to buy anything. Still, he couldn't let Lily down. She'd asked for one thing, a handcrafted dollhouse. Mark had seen it in a store window a few weeks ago. The delicate details of the house, the tiny furniture, the beautiful craftsmanship. It was everything she had dreamed of. But he'd waited too long to buy it. Now, with time running out, Mark felt the pressure building up inside him. The mall was packed, the aisles clogged with carts and excited families, all rushing to finish their shopping. Mark pushed forward, weaving through the crowd, his heart thumping in his chest as he searched for the toy store. Every step felt heavier than the last, the weight of Christmas expectations bearing down on him. He could hear the laughter of children and the chatter of families. But he wasn't part of that world today. Not yet. Not until he found that dollhouse. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, he spotted the store. A small corner shop, tucked away in the far end of the mall, with a wooden sign hanging above the door. He hurried toward it, his pulse quickening as he stepped inside. The air smelled like fresh pine and cinnamon, and the shelves were lined with a mix of toys, gifts, and trinkets. But Mark wasn't interested in anything else. His eyes scanned the shelves frantically, hoping, praying, that the dollhouse was still there. He walked past rows of toys, his fingers brushing the surfaces as he went, but his mind was focused entirely on one thing. Then, at the far end of the store, he saw it. The dollhouse. Its intricate design gleamed under the store's warm lighting. It was the one Lily had been talking about for months. A smile tugged at the corners of his mouth, but it quickly faded as he reached the shelf. The price tag stared back at him, bold and unforgiving. His stomach sank. Mark's heart sank too. He hadn't expected it to be cheap, but he hadn't expected this. The price was far more than he could afford. He thought back to the bills piled on his kitchen table, the overdue notices, the calls he hadn't answered. There was no way he could afford this, especially not with the holidays already stretching his budget to its limit. Yet, looking at the dollhouse, he couldn't walk away, not without trying. He grabbed the dollhouse, a faint hope rising in his chest. He wasn't ready to give up just yet. Mark approached the counter, holding the dollhouse with care, his fingers brushing over its smooth edges. The store clerk, a young woman with bright eyes and a calm demeanor, looked up from her register. She had a gentle smile, one that made Mark feel a little more at ease, even though his stomach was tied in knots. "Is this for someone special?" she asked, her voice soft but curious. Mark nodded, trying to keep his voice steady. "It's for my daughter, Lily. She's been asking for this dollhouse for months." The clerk's smile widened. "It's beautiful. I'm sure she'll love it." Mark's heart swelled with emotion. He could already picture Lily's face when she opened the gifter, wide, excited eyes, her little hands eagerly tearing off the wrapping paper. It would be the perfect Christmas, one to remember. But as he placed the dollhouse on the counter and the clerk rang up the price, reality came crashing back. The total flashed on the screen, and Mark's breath caught in his throat. It was more than he had in his wallet. It was more than he had in his checking account. He could feel the color draining from his face. "Yeah, I think there's been a mistake," Mark stammered, his voice faltering as he glanced at the price tag. "This is a bit more than I expected." The clerk paused, sensing the tension in the air. She studied his face for a moment, and Mark could tell she was trying to figure out what to say. "Is everything okay?" she asked gently. Mark hesitated. He didn't want to explain his financial struggles to a stranger, especially not with Christmas right around the corner, but the pressure of the moment felt too heavy to ignore. "It's just, I don't know if I can afford this," he confessed. The clerk didn't respond immediately. She just took a moment, looking at him with understanding. Mark's chest tightened. He hated this feeling, hated the thought that he might not be able to provide the gift his daughter had been dreaming of. His hands trembled as he reached for his wallet, but just before he could pull out the credit card, the clerk spoke again. "I'm sorry," she said, her tone soft. "Let me see if I can help you out." The clerk's calm demeanor did little to ease Mark's nerves. He could feel his face growing hot as she typed something into the register. His mind raced. He thought about the stack of bills on his kitchen table, the rent that was due in a few days, and the fact that he hadn't been able to buy groceries the week before. He couldn't afford this dollhouse. Not in a million years. And yet, he couldn't bring himself to walk away from it either. "I'm sorry, I just wanted to give her something special this year," Mark said, his voice quiet now, almost as if he were talking to himself. "I know it's not much, but she's been asking for this for months." The clerk looked at him, a knowing look in her eyes. "I understand," she said softly. "Sometimes, the holidays can feel like a lot of pressure, especially when you're trying to make everything perfect." Mark blinked, surprised by the kindness in her voice. She didn't seem judgmental or rushed like some of the other store employees he'd encountered. There was no hint of frustration, just a quiet, steady understanding. It caught him off guard, and for a moment, he felt a little less alone. "Well," the clerk said after a beat, "we might be able to work something out." She looked down at the register again, typing something in. "I can give you a small discount. It won't bring the price down a lot, but it might help." Mark looked at her, his heart sinking even further. A small discount wasn't going to cut it. He felt the knot in his stomach tighten. "I don't think it'll be enough," he murmured, barely able to speak the words. I don't want to waste your time." But the clerk didn't seem to be finished. Instead, she looked at him thoughtfully, as if she had something else in mind. Mark's gaze dropped to the counter, and he waited, unsure of what to expect next. The clerk hesitated for a moment before looking up at Mark. "I have an idea," she said quietly. "There's actually a clearance section toward the back. Some of the items are still brand new, just discounted. They might not be exactly what you were looking for, but they could still make a great gift." Mark felt a flicker of hope. "Are you sure?" he asked, unsure whether he should get his hopes up. The clerk nodded. "Why don't you take a look? You never know what you might find." Mark's heart beat a little faster. He wasn't ready to give up just yet. He glanced at the dollhouse one last time, feeling the weight of his decision. He had come so close to buying it, but something told him he wasn't meant to give up on Lily's Christmas just yet. With a quiet thank you, Mark walked to the back of the store, his eyes scanning the shelves filled with discounted items, and that's when he saw it. A beautiful wooden toy set, intricately carved with small details that made it look just as special as the dollhouse. It wasn't the same, but it was close enough. It was perfect in its own way. Mark reached for it, a sense of relief washing over him. Maybe this wasn't the gift Lily had asked for, but it would still be something she would love. It would still be something he could give her, and that was all that mattered. Mark stood in the aisle, his fingers running over the smooth edges of the wooden toy set. It wasn't the dollhouse, but something about it felt right. The small wooden pièce-destiny chairs, tables, and little figures were crafted with such care, and the design was simple yet beautiful. He could already imagine Lily's eyes lighting up as she carefully arranged the pieces, creating stories and adventures in her little world. It wasn't the big, show-stopping gift she'd been hoping for, but it was something that would ignite her imagination, something she could treasure just as much. He picked up the toy set, weighing it in his hands, and felt a spark of hope that had been missing just moments before. The price tag was a relief, significantly lower than the dollhouse, but still a stretch for his tight budget. He glanced toward the counter, where the clerk had stood patiently, waiting for him. Sarah, the clerk, had been so understanding. It wasn't just the discount she'd offered. There was something in her diminutive calm assurance that made Mark feel like he wasn't being judged for his struggles. She wasn't just a store employee trying to make a sale. She seemed genuinely concerned. He carried the wooden toy set toward the front of the store, his heart a little lighter now. As he approached the counter, Sarah was finishing up with another customer. She looked up and smiled warmly, her eyes kind. "That's a great choice," she said, nodding at the toy set in Mark's hands. "I think it will be a wonderful gift for your daughter. It's the kind of toy she can keep for years." Mark's chest tightened with gratitude. "Yeah," he said quietly, glancing down at the set. "It's not exactly what she wanted, but I think she'll like it. She's the creative type, always building things with her blocks and making up stories. I just wanted to give her something special, you know?" "I get it," Sarah replied. "I'm sure it'll be perfect." Mark set the toy set on the counter and pulled out his wallet, his fingers brushing over the worn bills inside. He wasn't sure how he was going to stretch his budget, even with the discount Sarah had offered, but the thought of Lily's smile when she opened the gift kept him going. "Is there anything else I can do to help?" Sarah asked, her voice filled with genuine kindness. Mark shook his head. "No, I think this will do." But before he could finish paying, Sarah hesitated for a moment, looking down at the register. Mark, feeling the weight of his financial situation creeping back in, began to reach for his credit card. That's when Sarah spoke again. "Hold on a second," she said softly. "Let me see if there's something I can do." Mark looked at her, confused. He had already accepted that this was the best he could do, but Sarah wasn't done yet. She began typing something into the register, and Mark waited, unsure of what was happening. A moment later, she turned the screen toward him. "I know it's still not quite what you had planned, but I've added a small gift card for a local cafe. It's not much, but I hope it'll give you a little break." Mark blinked, taken aback by the unexpected gesture. You didn't have to do that." "I know," Sarah said with a smile. "But you've been so patient, and I can see how much you care about making this Christmas special for your daughter. Sometimes a little kindness can go a long way." Mark's heart swelled as he took the gift card. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I really appreciate this, more than you know." Sarah simply nodded, her expression warm. "You're welcome. I hope this Christmas turns out to be everything you want it to be." As Mark made his way out of the store, the weight of the bag in his hand felt somehow lighter despite the challenges ahead. The wooden toy set wasn't the glamorous gift he had imagined, but it was still perfect in its own way. And the gesture from Sarah, a gift card for a cafe, something he hadn't even expected, felt like a small Christmas miracle. It wasn't just about the money or the toy anymore. It was about kindness, the understanding that there were still people who cared, who noticed, who made life a little easier when it felt like the world was stacked against you. As Mark stepped outside into the crisp winter air, he paused for a moment, taking a deep breath. The mall was still bustling with last-minute shoppers, families running around in a frenzied race to finish their holiday preparations. But Mark stood there, his eyes closed for a brief second, feeling a quiet sense of peace wash over him. For the first time in a long while, he didn't feel alone in this. It was as if Sarah's kindness had reminded him that there was still magic in the world, even in the midst of struggle. He walked toward his car, a sense of purpose in every step. The toy set for Lily, while not exactly what he had planned, would still make her happy. And now, with the cafe gift card in his pocket, maybe he could take a moment to rest, to enjoy the season, and to remember what truly mattered: family, love, and the kindness of strangers. When he finally arrived home, the sky had darkened, and Christmas lights twinkled on every street corner. Mark glanced at the small tree in the corner of his living room, a modest thing, but one that Lily had decorated with care. She would be home soon, her excitement palpable as she counted down the days until Christmas morning. Mark felt a small smile tug at his lips. The holiday wasn't perfect, but it was theirs, and that made it more than enough. That evening, as Mark sat on the couch, wrapping the toy set in simple brown paper, his mind wandered back to Sarah. There was something about her, something familiar in the way she spoke, in the way she understood his struggles, without him having to explain. Maybe it was because she, too, seemed to understand what it felt like to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders, to try and make Christmas magical despite all the difficulties life threw your way. It wasn't until a few days later that Mark found himself back at the mall, needing to pick up a few last-minute items. As he passed by the same store, he couldn't help but glance inside. To his surprise, he saw Sarah behind the counter again, her eyes scanning the shelves with an air of quiet focus. She seemed different this time, more relaxed, less hurried, as if the weight of the holiday rush had lifted, even if only for a moment. Without thinking, Mark walked into the store, his heart a little lighter than before. Sarah noticed him immediately and offered a warm smile, the kind that made you feel like you weren't just another face in the crowd. "Hey there," she said. "Back for another round of Christmas shopping?" Mark chuckled softly. "I think I'm done for the year. Just needed to pick up a few things." They shared a brief laugh before Sarah spoke again, her tone more conversational than before. "You know, I've been thinking about our conversation the other day. I get it sometimes. The holidays don't go the way we want, but it's the little things that matter the most." Mark nodded, surprised by the depth of the conversation. "Yeah, it's easy to get lost in what we think we need, but it's really about being there for the people we love." Sarah smiled, her eyes lighting up. "Exactly. That's what makes it all worthwhile." For a few moments, they stood there, exchanging stories about their respective Christmas plans. Mark learned that Sarah, like him, was a single parent. She spoke about her son, who was the same age as Lily, and how she had been working overtime just to make ends meet. They didn't talk about their struggles as a pity party, but as two people who simply understood each other's challenges. There was no need for pretense, no masks to hide behind. Just two people doing their best in the face of it all. Mark felt a warmth spread through him, a sense of connection that he hadn't expected. It wasn't just about the dollhouse, the toy set, or the discount. It was about a shared experience, about people coming together and finding solidarity in the middle of a season that often seemed to demand perfection. Christmas Eve arrived, and Mark's apartment was filled with the smell of cinnamon and pine. The tree sparkled, its lights reflecting off the glass ornaments that Lily had carefully hung. The presents were wrapped, and the small wooden toy set sat under the tree, just waiting for Lily to discover it. But there was still something missing, a sense of closure, a feeling that everything was as it should be. Just as Mark was about to settle in for a quiet evening, the doorbell rang. His heart skipped a beat. He wasn't expecting anyone. When he opened the door, there stood Sarah, a small, neatly wrapped package in her hands. "Yeah, I know it's last minute," Sarah said with a smile, "but I wanted to make sure Lily had something extra this Christmas." Mark blinked in surprise as she handed him the gift. It was a beautifully wrapped box, and when Mark opened it, his breath caught. Inside was the handcrafted dollhouse, the one he had seen in the store window. The one he had almost bought but couldn't afford. I don't know what to say," Mark murmured, overwhelmed. Sarah simply smiled, her eyes filled with understanding. I know it's been a tough year. I just thought Lily deserved a little extra magic this Christmas. It's on me. Mark's eyes filled with tears as he looked at the dollhouse, then back at Sarah. He didn't know how to express the gratitude he felt, but his heart swelled with emotion. Thank you, he whispered, barely able to speak. You have no idea how much this means. Sarah nodded. It's my pleasure. Merry Christmas, Mark. And as Mark stood there, holding the gift in his hands, he knew this Christmas would be one he would never forget. The Christmas morning sun broke through the curtains, casting a warm glow across Mark's modest living room. The soft sound of snow crunching underfoot outside was the only noise breaking the stillness. Mark sat on the couch, his legs crossed beneath him, staring at the tree where Lily's presents were stacked neatly. The dollhouse, now wrapped in shiny red paper, sat beside the wooden toy set, waiting for her eager hands to unwrap them. Mark ran a hand through his hair, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. This Christmas, despite everything, he had managed to pull it off. He hadn't let the weight of his financial struggles, the pressure of the season, or the exhaustion of the past year stop him from making this day special. He heard Lily's footsteps coming down the hallway. "Daddy!" she shouted, her voice filled with excitement. She appeared at the doorway, her wide eyes full of wonder. Her hair was a mess from just waking up, and her pajamas were wrinkled, but to Mark, she had never looked more beautiful. "Good morning, sweetie," Mark greeted her, his voice filled with warmth. Lily rushed over to him, her little feet slapping the floor as she jumped into his lap. "Can I open my presents now? Can I, please?" Mark laughed, his heart swelling with love. "Go ahead, sweetheart." Lily immediately dove into the pile of gifts, tearing off the paper with little care for neatness. The first gift she opened was the wooden toy set, and her face lit up with joy. "Oh, Daddy, look! It's perfect!" she exclaimed, running her fingers over the tiny chairs and tables. Mark grinned. "I'm glad you like it, baby." But then, Lily's eyes caught sight of the larger package, the dollhouse. She hesitated, a puzzled look crossing her face. Is this the one I wanted?" she asked softly, as if she wasn't sure if it was real. Mark's heart skipped a beat. He hadn't expected her to be so emotional. He nodded, trying to keep his voice steady. "It sure is. Merry Christmas, Lily." Lily's eyes grew wide with disbelief, then filled with tears. She threw her arms around him, hugging him tight. "Daddy, thank you. Thank you so much. I love it." Mark held her close, his own eyes beginning to water. This was the moment he had been waiting for, the moment that made every hardship worthwhile. The struggles, the long hours at work, the anxiety over bills, all of it faded into the background as Lily's joy filled the room. She was happy. She was safe. And for this one moment, nothing else mattered. "I'm so glad you love it," Mark whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "You deserve it, kiddo." Lily spent the next few hours playing with her new toys, her laughter echoing through the house. Mark watched her with a full heart, taking in every moment. This was the Christmas he had always hoped for, not because of the gifts, but because of the love and the bond they shared. It wasn't about perfection. It was about making the best of what they had and cherishing the simple moments. As the day went on, Mark found himself sitting by the window, watching the snowflakes fall gently outside. The tree lights flickered softly, and the house was filled with the warm scent of cinnamon rolls he had baked earlier. Lily was in her room, happily arranging her new dollhouse, while Mark sat with a steaming cup of coffee, reflecting on everything that had led up to this moment. He thought back to the day he'd first walked into the store, searching for the perfect gift. He thought about how the pressure of his finances had almost made him give up, about how close he had come to walking away. But he hadn't. He had fought through the doubts, the fears, and the exhaustion, and in the end, it had all been worth it. Mark made a silent promise to himself in that moment. This Christmas wasn't just about getting a toy for his daughter. It was about showing her that, no matter what, he would always find a way to make her happy. No matter how tough things got, no matter how difficult the road ahead seemed, He would always do his best to give her a life filled with love and joy. He glanced at the small framed photo of Lily on the table beside him. She was only 6 years old, but she already had such a big heart. She was kind, thoughtful, and always looking out for others. Mark couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. She was the reason he worked so hard, the reason he pushed through the hardest days. She was his world. As the night drew to a close, Mark found himself sitting at the dinner table with Lily, enjoying a quiet meal. They didn't have much, but they had each other. And that, Mark realized, was everything. "I love you, Daddy," Lily said, her mouth full of mashed potatoes. Mark smiled, his heart swelling with affection. "I love you too, kiddo, more than anything in the world." The weeks after Christmas flew by in a blur of work and everyday life, but Mark found himself looking back on that holiday season with a deep sense of gratitude. The gifts were important, of course, but it was the little moments, the quiet conversations, the shared smiles, the love in Lily's eyes that had made the holiday so special. One afternoon, a few days after New Year's, Mark received a call from Sarah. He was surprised, but when he answered, he could hear the warmth in her voice immediately. "Hey, Mark," she said. "I just wanted to check in and see how Lily liked the dollhouse." Mark chuckled softly. "She loved it. She's been playing with it every day. I can't believe how much joy it's brought her." "I'm so glad to hear that," Sarah replied. "It's funny, because I've been thinking about our conversation that day, and I wanted to thank you for letting me help. It really meant a lot to me." Mark felt a lump form in his throat. "No, Sarah. It was your kindness that made all the difference. I'm not sure what I would have done without you. You made this Christmas possible for us." There was a brief pause on the other end of the line. "I'm just glad I could help," Sarah said quietly. "I've been there. I know what it's like. Sometimes the holidays can feel like a lot of pressure, but it's the little things that make the biggest impact." Mark nodded, even though she couldn't see him. "You're right. It's not about the big things. It's about showing up for the people we care about. It's about kindness, no matter how small." "I agree," Sarah said with a smile in her voice. "And I'm just happy to know you and Lily. It's not about the gifts, it's about the connection." Mark smiled, feeling the warmth of her words settle in his chest. "Thank you again, Sarah. I'll never forget this Christmas. You made it truly special." A few weeks later, Mark found himself back at the mall, walking past the same store where he had met Sarah. The holiday rush had passed, and the store had a quieter, calmer atmosphere now. He walked in without hesitation, feeling a sense of comfort as he looked around at the familiar toys and gifts. He spotted Sarah at the counter and walked over to say hello. She looked up, and her face lit up when she saw him. "Mark, it's good to see you," she said, her smile genuine. "You too, Sarah," Mark replied. "I just wanted to stop by and thank you again. I've been thinking about everything you did for us, and it's been on my mind a lot. I really appreciate it." Sarah nodded, her expression warm and understanding. "You don't need to thank me. You and Lily are a reminder that it's the small acts of kindness that make a real difference." Mark smiled, a feeling of contentment settling over him. "Well, you definitely changed our Christmas, Sarah. You reminded me that it's not about what we have, it's about who we have, and I'll always remember that." As they exchanged one last smile, Mark knew that this experience had changed him in ways he couldn't fully express. The kindness of a stranger had shifted his perspective, reminding him that even in the hardest times, there was always room for love, connection, and a little bit of magic.